So here's our pile of pallets, wooden pallets. I obviously went ahead and pulled out the nails, and we got some good flat pieces here, maybe about 3/4. As you can see, maybe about 3/4. So we're going to cut these down to size. We're going to true up the sides here with the table saw, and then we're going to cut these down to size to 1.5 inches. And here's our pile. And this is free wood. Well, it came with the rocks, but pellets are free. And I know there's a bunch of YouTubes on how to reclaim them, but I just hate throwing out old wood. So let's set up the table saw and let's get to work. So most of these are about 3 and a little over 1/4. So we're going to have 1.5 inch strips. So I'm going to go ahead and take 1/8 inch off each side to clean them up. And we're just going to rip these with the table saw and go from there. So then we have some good pieces to work with. This is pine, so it's easy to cut. But as you can see here, we've got a little mess, a little cleanup there. These edges are obviously rough. So we're going to clean these up. This is 3 inches. Or eventually want 3 inches, but that means 1/8 to clean up those edges. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean these up, rip these out, and go from there. So we're going to clean these up about the width of the blade. Just want to clean up the edge. We're going to run these through the table saw, rip each side, and then cut it down to rip it to 1.5 inch strips. Okay, since we do not have a joiner, so we've cleaned up this side. This is the these are the 5.25 inch pieces. So we cleaned it up, and just a word of warning: when you feed it, it's really rough. So it'll feed rough. See that jagged edge? It'll feed really rough. So just take your time. Be careful. Don't force it. If it's binding, obviously shut it off, unplug it, unstick it, and then try it again. So I just wanted to clean up one edge. So we're going to measure. We're going to use this edge to feed it to the fence, and we're going to measure 1.5 inches. We're going to set our distance here to be 1.5 inches, and then just rip these strips 1.5 inches. So we finished ripping them. And I'll clean up the edges. Let's just see how we did here. So a little over, here we go, a little over 1.5 inches, just a hair. And that's fine. So yeah, all these are consistent, and then we'll rip the others. Okay, now sort your pile. So this is a pretty decent piece. Got a little messed up here. So we're just trying to find some good usable pieces. Obviously this knot we're going to cut out. This we can't use, so we'll cut this here. So you want to sort your pile in usable pieces, and then we'll just trim off, or when we measure, we won't obviously include that bad piece. So, and all in all, we got some really good pieces. This is the kind of the second class pile, or it's just got, the ends are just kind of messed up a little bit. So yeah, we just won't measure from there, and that's fine. That's fine. And then we've also got our good pile here, which was really decent. The ends are pretty good. Not a ton of knots, no splits or anything. So pretty decent little pieces here. So yeah, this is going to make a ton of picture frames. So yeah, you just want to sort your wood, and then when we measure it off, obviously we won't include the bad parts. We're going to check, this is a scrap piece of wood. We're going to check our 45 to make sure it's exactly 45. The machine is already set up, but I always take a scrap piece of wood to check my 45. Lined up. Pretty good here. Yeah, we got just a little bit. I can shine a little daylight. It's pretty tight. I'm going to double check that with the light, but so far it looks pretty good here. Okay, here's our 45. We can shine a flashlight behind there to see if we see any daylight. But yeah, we're looking pretty good. I think we've got it dialed in. And we'll just lock it in here for our 45 and then just start doing our miter joints. I've set up a little stop block. And it's 22 3/8 from the blade. It's hard to see there, but 22 3/8 from the blade. So this is my little stop block, so I can just churn these out. I'll cut the one and then flip it so that the short side, so that the pointy side is facing out. So I need to flip them. We need 22 3/8 for the long side. So we measured from the very edge here all the way to my stop block here. Here's my stop block. So that way every piece I don't have to measure all the time. I have a little stop block, so it should make this a little faster since we can crank these out. So this is a full piece. We'll back it up to our stop block here. And then we'll make this cut. Pull this piece out. Flip it around. Cut that piece. Flip it around and just repeat that process. So what we want to do, so we cut off a piece and it's exactly in line, so we want to measure from here all the way to our stop block at 22 3/8. We have our handy dandy ruler, and we want to measure our stop block 22 3/8. Okay, I put a piece of scrap. So this is right up against the blade. This piece is right up against the blade. And so we're going to measure from this point here all the way to our stop block. There's our stop block. And we measured at 22 3/8. So we've got our little stop block, and 22 3/8 is what we need. So we're going to do a practice cut, and so basically it's going to go like this, and then we flip it over, and that's how we're going to get our cuts. On a scrap piece of wood to make sure we're dialed in. So now we want, for our second sides, we want 18 3/8. So our stop block's at 22 3/8. We need to move it in 4 inches. So I marked 4 inches right here, and that's where our stop block's going to be. So here's our stop block 4 inches. I'm always going to do a test cut with a piece of scrap wood. I could measure this, but I already measured it from here to here. So we're going to do a test run with a scrap piece of wood first to make sure we're on dialed in. Okay, I had to adjust my stop block a little bit, but I think we're pretty darn close to 18 3/8 there. So I'm going to go ahead and run with that. I think we're flush on this corner here. It's upside down. Just a little bit. Let me go ahead and adjust it a little bit. No, it's good about 18 3/8. It's just maybe a 64th off, but I'm going to go ahead and take that. Let's go ahead and do the same procedure here. Okay, how do we do? So these are 16 by 20 frames. So this is just a mock-up. So the long side on the bottom and top, and the edges are pretty tight. Looking good. This is just a mock-up. So yeah, we have a little bit of overplay here. Maybe we can trim that up after we glue it. But because these weren't exactly, even though we ripped them to 1.5 inches, we have a little bit of excess here, so right there. So from that pallet, we got about 10 usable frames and some leftover scrap. So we got about 10 that usable frames from the pallet. These are the flat pieces. The 2x4s I'm not sure what to do with yet, but these are about 10 frames from that pallet. So here's our router table. We got a 1/4 inch bit in here. It's a 1/4 inch high, 1/4 inch wide. We're going to cut the underside of this. So basically the pointy side out. I'm going to cut the underside of this right here. Now we're going to do a test cut. I'm going to do a test cut on a piece of scrap wood to make sure we're at 1/4 inch wide, 1/4 inch deep. So we fed it through our router, and look, we have a little strip left. So that means it's we need to pull this in just a little bit, our fence, to get rid of that strip. We could run it again with the pass of the router, but let's go ahead and pull the fence in just maybe a 1/64 of an inch. So here's our groove. It's a little better. It was hard feeding it because this is real rough, but I'm pretty pleased with it. I'm going to measure that, and we got some good meat to hold that picture frame in there, and I'm pretty pleased with that. It's a little more than a 1/4 inch, 1/4 down, 1/4 deep, 1/4 in. So I'm gonna run with this. Maybe do some more practice runs before because at the end here, as you can see, it kind of skipped. So maybe a few more practice runs, but I think we're ready to hit the gas and knock the others out. So how do we do? We are a 1/4 inch too short. 19 3/4. Let's check the other one. We're at 16 or 15 3/4, so we're exactly off a 1/4 inch. So no big deal. We can get a bigger bit to take out this more out, to take more of this lip out. It's better to be on the long side. See, we're 16 3/4. I wanted to be at exactly 16. So that's okay. That's okay. We can run that 5/16 bit and take a little bit more meat off the interior here. That's okay. This is a 3/8 bit. We've got it a 1/4 high. We've got it 3/8 in. So a 1/4 high should be the same depth as our groove. We want to go a little wider this time because we were short. So that's 3/8 wide, 1/4 inch deep. So how'd we do? So we're dead on 16 there. Dead on. Using that extra 3/8 bit really helped. So let's check the other side. You see 20? Dead on 20. And the glass is about 1/8 of an inch short. The mat board is about a 1/16 of an inch short. So yeah, dead on. So using that 3/8 bit really worked well. We went in first with the quarter deep, quarter wide. Then we went a quarter deep, 3/8 wide for that 3/8 bit. Okay, next up is to find some pieces that you cut that's got some character, maybe some knots, maybe some interesting features. I laid it out here, and obviously it's subjective how rustic you want this look, because we are going to do a little bit of sanding to take off the paint and some of the blemishes so the finish sticks. But I'm just looking for some character. There's a neat little knot here, so there's some character that these were old pallets. So then I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to actually work on the back side of this, because this is going to allow us to line up our joints. So we're actually going to work on this back side. We're going to line these joints up, and then we're going to get ready to glue this. I went ahead and mocked this up with some straight edges here, or some squares, and I got these at Home Depot, 8 by 12, and I'm just going to see how true these edges are, just to see how we're lining up. And this is just a dry run, and then I'm going to go ahead and measure to make sure that we're exactly 20 inches. There's not much we can do about if we're off. I mean, if we have to whittle down a little bit, great. But yeah, so we're 20 here. We're not exactly tight. So yeah, we're 20. We're 20 here. And I just want to check the overall dry fit, and then we can go ahead and get the strap clamp and then just put a little glue. So yeah, so we'll put the strap clamp to hold it in place, and then I will show you how I clamp my squares so everything is perfectly, or as perfect as possible, nice and square. Okay, working on some drop cloth, some plastic, so I don't glue to the table. So I just dry fit my strap clamp to where I want it, and make sure all the edges are nice and snug. This is just dry fitting. I'm just dry fitting it just to get the strap clamp before I put any glue in there. So yeah, whatever table surface you're working on, it's always a good idea to put like a drop cloth or wax paper so it doesn't stick. And then we're going to apply some glue, but a little bit, but I just wanted to get this set up initially with this strap clamp. So this is our initial setup. And then we will start gluing, and then clamping to make sure it's nice and square. So I'm just putting a little bit on and then smearing with my fingers. Just a nice light coat, and I want to try to clean up on each side, because when this dries, you can sand it, but try to do a clean job beforehand so you don't have so much cleanup afterwards. So here's how we're looking. I used the strap clamp to initially set it, and then I have my squares, So this is clamping down here, keeping that tight, and then these baby little clamps doing the same on each corner, and then going up here. So I ran out of squares, so I'm using my quick square, and just enough to hold it so that that edge is nice and tight and square. So we're holding that against there and there. And then likewise on this corner, each corner has a clamp. Clamp on the one side here, and then on the other side to force it tight. And then before I set all my clamps up, well, when I had the strap clamp tight, I pulled it up, and then this is a little paper towel that's damp, and I wiped the underside of this really well, and then here, just to make sure I got all my glue, and I did that on all corners. Make sure I got all the glue, the excess glue, wiped off, because it's kind of a pain. I mean, you can sand it, but it's kind of hard to sand. So I just want to make sure that nice and tight, and I wiped up all the excess glue. It's better to do cleanup when it's before it dries. So I could put a little bit of glue in that, but I tended, last time I used too much glue and it was such a mess. So this, I just had a nice little thin little bead. So there, and then over here I wiped it clean, and then there's a little bit of residue here. But that glue, when it dries, it's pretty hard to get off. And the glue that I'm using, that's the glue that I'm using. It's good stuff, but it is hard to take off when it dries. So, and then what I do is I'll take my cap off and I'll clean this under the sink and clean it really, really well. But this is good stuff. So we're going to leave this, I'm going to leave this for 24 hours. Technically I think it's 3 hours or 12 hours, but I'm going to leave it for 24 hours. And then it doesn't matter now, but I guess I'm going to go ahead and check to make sure we're 16 and we're just a hair, or a little bit, maybe a 16th off. So can't do anything about that now. But everything, obviously the number one is to make sure everything is nice and square and tight. Now these clamps, I clamp down pretty tight because I want everything nice and square and tight. If we have to take off a little bit material, great. I mean, that's no big deal. Can always take a little chisel and elongate it a little bit. I noticed my glass from Home Depot was 1/8 of an inch off. So these are just a little tight, like we ran that 3/8 bit. So, and we have a nice healthy shoulder. So if we have to, I'd rather take off a little bit of material than have a gap or not enough. Like the other frames that I did, it was too much, and I barely had enough to grab onto. So this has a nice healthy shoulder. So again, nothing we can't do about that now, but when we go and dry fit this with the glass, and if we have to take out a little material, we can, but I'm pretty pleased with that. So this is our initial setup, and I'm going to leave this for 24 hours. So we just removed the clamps, and our edges look really good. We don't have any glue dripping over here. Corners look pretty decent. So this is the inside. Moving over here, everything looks pretty good, nothing split. This is the inside with the glass. Now let's flip it over. So our corners, fairly tight on some of the corners. But over here, we've got a crack. I mean, it's not a crack. We're going to seal that up. And I went ahead and put a light so it didn't edge out, and so we can easily control it. So it didn't. And then we got another gap there, and we're going to fill that with some. We're going to make up a batch of filler. Not too concerned about it. I would rather not have anything ooze out. So let's go ahead and fill those cracks. Let's go ahead and make our little paste. So I went ahead and taped the back side of this so the glue doesn't drip out, and then the edge too. And then I just put some tape here just so it doesn't drip out, because we don't want to, we're going to try to be as clean as possible, because when that glue dries it's really hard to sand and chisel off. So yeah, I got all of our tapes, corners taped best we can, and then let's go ahead and make our paste. So I've got a little to-go container with some sawdust. It's sanding sawdust. It's real fine. And then kind of equal parts. And we're just going to get real messy here. We're just going to mix it in with our finger. You can be elegant and mix it in with other spoon or something, but we just want to mix this in. You can buy filler, but why? So just going to mix this in a little bit. And not super runny. I need a little more glue there. Okay, this is a good consistency. And again, you could be cleaner and use tools. And then we're just going to fill it in with your hand. I'm going to shove it in as best I can to those grooves, and then we'll wipe off the excess. I'm going to do that to all the edges, all the corners. Now I'm only going to put a little bit in the cracks here so the wood doesn't split as we're sanding it. Normally I would be not put the, because that's actually part of the character of the wood, but when we sand it I just don't want that to split out and break out. And so here up here, this is probably most predominant. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that crack in, because I don't want to, when I sand it, have that break apart and split. So just using some of our paste up here. And then we will wipe that off with a paper towel, a little moist paper towel. Wipe all that excess off, because once it dries it's going to be really, this is a paper towel, or a wet paper towel. All that excess is going to be hard to sand off. Okay, so that's pretty much wiped off pretty clean. I got the back side here, and then of course this groove, try to clean it up really well, because that's going to be real hard to take the, you can take a little chisel and clean that up, but if you can clean it up beforehand. And that looks pretty good there. And likewise on this corner here. And then check there. Inside corner looks pretty good. This is pretty good here, and then we will trim this off later. And then that inside corner, I want to make sure, clean that up. And then likewise this one here. And then we kind of filled in that little crack there. Just didn't want to, when I hit it with the sander, have it bust apart. But I don't want to take too much away from the character of it. We do see a little tiny crack there. I mean, not a crack, but it's just a seam. So we'll fill it in just a little bit as that glue tries to settle in a little bit in the crack. So just kind of forcing it in there. And we'll wipe it out. And check down here. Looks good. I'm going to wait 24 hours on this. So we're going to flip it over and hit the back of the corner, the back corners, the back side. And there was, right here, there was a hairline crack. I just push that in as much as I can. And then that corner. And then this had a knot, so we're filling in the knot. And I've got a piece of tape to catch that inside corner, so we don't want any glue in there. And I'll come up here and do this corner. Just force that in. And then check, I just clean this up a little bit just so when I hit it with my sander it doesn't pop that out. And then here, and then we're just going to get a little piece of paper towel, moist paper towel, and clean that up. Because you don't want any residue. You want to clean all that residue up because it's really hard to chisel off and sand off if you leave it on. Okay, this is just a little paper towel, and I'll try to wipe all the excess off. All the little globs, because when they dry they'll be real hard to chisel off. And we want to make sure to get this inside corner really well. And then likewise in all the corners. Then we're going to wait till that dries. I'm going to go ahead and pull these out now, just so that doesn't dry on there, the glue doesn't dry on, so we have a nice clean inside edge. We're not filling that up with glue. I pulled that one off. And then I'm going to pull this one off here. Make sure that's nice and clean. And then this other corner too. And then I'm going to wait 24 hours and we'll come back, and then we'll probably be ready for sanding. Okay, after a few hours I wanted to check it, and it did settle. So we're going to make up another batch of our glue mixture. These did settle a little bit, so we're going to fill these in with our glue mixture here, glue and sawdust. We're just going to fill those in again, and this is after a few hours because it will settle a little bit. So we'll just shove that in some more. So we will shove that in some more and then hit the back side. Because yeah, it will settle a little bit. And also too, because this is raw wood, it's not like live wood, it will soak up a lot. So a little bit there and a little bit on the corner here. So yeah, it will soak up because it's unfinished wood. Put a little bit in there, and then I'll flip it over to this other corner and then check the other side. This is obviously the presentation side, but I'm just forcing that in there with my finger like last time. And then I'm going to put a little bit in this crack here. Just don't want it to split when I put my sander on it. So this is after a few hours. And I'm going to leave that there. That's some of the character of the wood there. And then I got my little mix. Probably have to make a little bit more paste. And I'll flip it over and check on this side. These are pretty fresh. So that one didn't settle. This one doesn't look like it's settled. This one, I may just hit it a little bit here just to fill in those grooves, the gap. And then up here doesn't look like it's settled, maybe just a little bit. And then I will take a paper towel. I think because our paper towel was a little wet, it diluted the glue a little bit, so it definitely got in the crack a little bit. Yeah, it's so far so good. So we're going to go ahead and clean this up with paper towel. So this is 16, a little less than 16. But over here, about 15 and 7/8. So we're going to take a little bit of material off this edge with the chisel. It was a little bit snug when I cut that. So probably should have used that 1/2 inch or 7/16 bit. But we're just a little off. The other side, right in at 20 right there. Let's check the top. And we're dead on 20 right there. So I'm going to chisel out a little bit. I'm going to file and chisel this bottom piece. Here we're going to chisel a little bit out. Just a little bit, maybe 1/16 of an inch. And then file and 1/16 of an inch and file. Just wanted to get it as close to 16 as possible. Okay, I chiseled this out. Not the cleanest job, but definitely chiseled this out and then filed it out a little bit with this little file. I should have used a wider chisel, but so let's see how we did here. So at the widest points there. Actually a little over than 16, which is okay. Again, if I use that 7/16 bit, that would have done a cleaner job. But yeah, we're a quarter there, so we're a little high there, but that's okay. And then let's check it in the middle here. Yep. 16 there. A little over. It's a high spot. A little over 16 there, but that's okay. And this was tight. I didn't take too much off here. We're dead on 16. And then here, we're dead on. So, pretty pleased with that. Not the cleanest chisel job, but it gave us some space. And now let's go ahead and start sanding. Okay, sanding. This 36 grit is all they had. So pickings is slim locally. If you're going to do your project, you might find this online a little better. But this is 36 grit. Actually, I'm going to use it because there's some imperfections and I want to quickly take it down. I'm not too worried about taking too much material off, even though it is pine, even though it is softer. There's some imperfections that I want to clean up, and I want to make it nice to the touch. We could go a couple ways on this. We could leave it as is and then just finish it, but it's gritty. It's to the touch. If somebody bumps into it, they may snag it, even though if it's finished. I'm going to go ahead and this time I'm going to go ahead and sand it down, sand it nice and smooth, and then go ahead and finish it. But there's a lot of choices you could do here, but I'm going to go ahead and sand it down. There's a little bit of, we're going to go all around and take some material out down here, and then we have a little raised area there. Instead of just setting the sander on here for hours and hours, you want to take off equal amounts on the entire frame. So we'll just follow the sander around and around and around and around. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this off, sand it off. It's splintery, it's kind of rough to the touch. We don't want, if somebody puts this in their house, we don't want it to get snagged on clothing or splinter. We want to make it nice and smooth to the touch. So I'm using 36 grit. I'm not too worried about it being too aggressive. Normally you'd probably go with 40 or 60 for this initial cleanup. This is all they had. So I'm going to go ahead and go with that. And then I'm going to work up to my 120 here. This is 120. It's a 120. And then my last is a 220. It's a 220 pack. So we're going to do both sides. We're going to keep it nice and straight. We're not going to round the edges with the sander. And I've also been working on a piece of cardboard, just a little easier to work on instead of beating up your work table. So let's get to it. So this is the 36 grit. I'm just going along, just nice and gentle, just using the weight. I'm going about 4.5. I'm just gentle, I'm not putting a ton of pressure on it. Just going around and cleaning it up a little bit. Okay, so we cleaned this up with 36 grit. Made quick work of it. And I didn't want to take out much of the coloring. It kind of adds to the character. So yeah, pretty pleased with the way that this is 36 grit. Goes by really quick because it's nice and soft pine. Got some good character in this wood. And then flip it over. And again, trying to clean it up so it's smooth to the touch. Especially the back flip side was a little rough, so we cleaned that up with a 36 grit, and then I'm going to work up to 120 grit. And try to put some character back into it, or take a little bit out, but not too much, just to add some character to the original roots where it came from, and go from there. So this is 120 grit. We went over it front edge but kept it straight, and then of course the back, and then a little bit in that groove that we cleaned up a little bit. Didn't do the best chisel job, but so we want to make it nice and smooth, and we ran it with 100 grit, 120 grit, I'm sorry, and then we'll follow it up with 220. Now next we vacuum it really well. If you have one of those little brushes on your vacuum, you can do that. We're going to vacuum it really well, and then wipe it down with a rag. I'm also going to vacuum out my sander, keep it clean. So now next we're going to vacuum everything really well. Okay, we're using mineral spirits and an old t-shirt. I soaked it pretty well. So I went over it really well on all sides, back and forth. Get with the grain. We want to go with the grain. So yeah, the mineral spirits take up any little loose dust particles, and I'm really pleased the way this came out. I left a little bit of the character of the wood in there instead of sanding all that those spots out. Just left a little character to let you know that it is what it was. So yeah, it's really nice and smooth. I'm wearing gloves. I actually have some disposable cleaning, like blue gloves, so I can use them again and again and again. I couldn't find them, so this is real nice and smooth. That 220 really works great. I might say this took about an hour, including the chiseled out, sand down, clean up, and then wipe with mineral spirits. Now the next is finish we're going to use. We are not going to stain this. We're going to leave as is. So we either have a choice. It's going to be polyurethane, fast dry, oil based, semi-gloss. We either have a choice between this one here, Van Land. Not too crazy about it. I used it before. Not crazy about it. It's a little thick and it runs easy. The Minwax Premium Oil, this is my favorite. It's my favorite stuff to use. This is my favorite stuff to use, Minwax Premium Oil, Fast Drying Polyurethane, most durable clear protection. This is a warm semi-gloss. This is a semi-gloss over here. So we're going to use the Minwax. I've got a little tiny bucket here. Got at the home store, and I'm only going to fill this up maybe 50 milliliters or maybe an ounce. Can always add more later. So we're going to fill this up. Now because I'm lazy, I'm going to shake this, and then I got to stir to shake it and stir it really well. I'm just getting a tiny tip, maybe 1/8 of an inch of this brush, and then getting all the runoff, and then I want to hit the sides. I'm going to hold this with one hand like this, and then go over it, and then hang it, and then hit this side. But I'm going to go real light, real light. This is going to soak up a lot, but I'm going to go real light all around, and then leave it 24 hours. To clean our brush out, I'm using lacquer thinner. I put a little bit in my bucket, maybe a teaspoon, a tablespoon. I soaked my brushes, and then I cleaned my handle down. So to clean up, I squeezed out all the excess in a paper towel, and then I used lacquer thinner. Okay, so let's see how we did here. So I'm trying to shine the light here. So it's in a very, very thin coat, and it's going to soak up a lot. So it's a very, very thin coat. I just don't want it to run. A little bit of run there. And if you can take care of runs, you know, quickly, we can always sand them out, but if we don't have to. But yeah, this is a very, very light coat on all sides. I have it hanging by a cool coat hanger here. So I'm pretty pleased. This is the first coat. I always go really, really light. Just barely put on a coat. Everything else is looking really good. I don't see any runs. Generally, as a painter friend told me, you paint it once and you walk away and you look at it tomorrow, because let's say you think you missed a spot, and let's say you try to touch it up. You don't want to do that. You just want to let it dry, and then in the morning or the next time you check on it, you can always touch it up. There's a little tiny bit of run there, but overall I'm pretty pleased with this first coat. We'll probably put on 3 coats of that, 3 coats. I usually like these to dry overnight, if not 24 hours, and then I'll sand with 220 between coats, and then hit it again, and then hit it again, and hit it again. So yeah, it's just a very, very light coat, this first coat. So this is about 24 hours later, and it's a very, very, very light coat. It almost didn't actually coat it. So I'm just going around and doing a tactile feel, and I didn't see any runs. I don't feel any runs. So it feels decent. I mean, just feels nice and smooth. I don't see any runs. So we're just going to rinse and repeat. We're just going to apply maybe a teaspoon of finish. So went around, I don't see any runs. Yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and apply a very light coat again and just rinse and repeat. So I found my gloves, and these actually work really well. They're heavy duty cleaning gloves, but either Harbor Freight or Amazon, I can't remember. They're really thick, heavy duty gloves, but they work great for when I'm holding this and finishing it off, because these clean up really easy, and not throwing away as many disposable gloves. So I'm pretty happy with these. They're pretty thick, but I don't need much dexterity. I'm just holding with one hand and using the brush with the other. Normally, what I would do is look for any runs and sand out with 220. Very lightly sand out any imperfections, and then go over it with a damp cloth of mineral spirits. But because this is such a very light coat, I don't notice any runs, I don't notice any imperfections in the stain. So I'm actually not going to run it over with a piece of sandpaper, but probably each additional coats I will. So just a heads up there. I have a piece of loose 220 here, and just to lightly sand out any imperfections. But I don't notice any in this. So because it was such a very light coat that we put on, almost didn't even cover. So we'll put slightly heavier, but not too much, because we don't want this to run. It's better to err on the side of less is more on finish. When you do your coats, very, very light, and less is more on your finish. So again, we're using our Minwax here, and I'm probably going to put maybe a teaspoon in my cup here. Don't need a lot to cover this. Okay, how did we do? So there's a little bit of run. I don't know if the camera is going to pick it up, but there's a little bit of run up here. And trying the different lights, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it in the light. There's a little bit of run, a little bit there. So I'm just checking to see where there's a little bit of runs, the high spots. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with my 220 here. Let me just do this just real light. Let's see if that removed it there. And then I'm going to go along and look for all the high spots, all the runs, and then hit them with my 220, wipe it down with mineral oil, do another coat. So yeah, this is looking pretty decent, pretty good. Got real thin there. I'd rather go really thin than extra then you have to pull off. There's a run there. So I'm going to go ahead and hand sand this down, just the high spots and the run spots, and then we'll put on that extra coat. Another coat. So we're using a little spoon here, about 8 teaspoons, maybe 8 or 10 in here. This time I'm going to use a foam brush, because my other brush, I didn't squeeze out all the varnish, and even though I cleaned this with lacquer thinner, it is hard as a brick. Unfortunately, I think I ruined it. So I wasn't as careful last time to clean out my brush. Kind of a bummer there, because I try to use, and the foam brushes are actually my favorite for this because they're nice and smooth. I can more easily control how much matter or how much finish I put on there. But sadly, maybe 3 or 4 usage for these, and then you have to throw them out. So I'm only going to use this to show you that you can use different methods, and I'm just going to put just a tad bit, maybe just a little bit on the tip there. And this does soak up quite a lot, so we're going to go ahead and run with that. This is a piece of 16 by 20 glass that we got at Home Depot. Forget how much I paid for it, but it's Home Depot stocks it. And then we got safety glasses, in case it breaks, gloves, plastic putty knife, and of course box cutter. Now this, they packed it really, really well, which means this edge right here, obviously we're going to take the plastic off. This edge they glued on with like some impossible glue. I'm not sure what the best way is, so that's why I call it fighting with the glass. Because we'll take the film off, but then we'll take our putty knife and just jab it in there. I'm not sure if mechanical, thermal, or chemical is easier to remove that glue. I'm worried on the thermal. If I had a heat gun, it might melt the glue, but it may crack the glass, because this is really thin, economical glass. How do we say that? So in the past, what I've done is I've just kind of chipped away a little bit, and that's the best way I've found. Again, this glass is very, very brittle. It's reasonably priced, but they pack it like it's like a tank is going to run over or something. It's packed really, really, really well. I mean, they put a huge bead of glue inside here to the glass. So we have to pull it apart from all the packing, and then of course we're going to clean it really, really well. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove the glass. We have this on. I have a towel, and underneath I have a piece of cardboard to kind of cushion my work area. So obviously we're just going to remove the plastic film. Nothing too fancy about it, but I'm just using a little bit of the blade so I don't scratch the glass. And this film is pretty hard. It's pretty heavy duty film as well. So it's not like something really light. It's several thick mil thickness. So, and you just kind of want to be careful so you don't crack or chip the glass. So we're just gonna. My knife's kind of dull here. Not doing the most elegant of job. I guess you can actually score it on the cardboard that it comes with. They do pack it pretty well. I do have to say that. They do pack it pretty well. But it's because of that. They glue that glass to the cardboard. I mean, they excessively glue it. I guess they want to make sure that it ships okay. So obviously we remove the plastic here. And this is, put that aside. And then, like I said, what I've done, looks like it's, and then I've just chiseled this bottom edge. And I haven't found the best way to pry that off. But yeah, it's just kind of a, and as you can see, it's coming off pretty easy. I mean, fairly easily, but I don't know the best way to take it off. I don't know if rubbing a little bit of rubbing alcohol might chisel that off. But I don't want to use a metal scraper because that'll give me too much leverage, and then when I go to pry it, I could break the glass, because this is pretty darn thin. I don't know an easy way to do this. Just have to kind of fight with it, and it's really I'm not sure if I run a little bit of alcohol. Let me try that. It's all experimentation here. Not sure if this is going to work. I think it might work, but just kind of soak it in there. I'm not exactly sure if that's going to work, but it's worth a try. That way we don't have to put as much force on this. It seemed to kind of work. Maybe a little bit. Yeah, it seemed to work a little easier. Yeah, actually, it just smells like rubbing alcohol. Yeah, that worked a lot easier. Instead of trying to put too much, because it broke down that glue. As you can see here. Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. I didn't have to use too much alcohol, but so yeah, you can see that cleaned it up really well. So alcohol it is, and then we'll do the other side. So I'll just basically take the rubbing alcohol, 70%, and just kind of put it on pretty liberal and sloppy. As you probably noticed on most of my videos, I'm kind of sloppy. You can use this in a well-vented area. I I'm not too terribly concerned, but obviously if it's flammable nearby, or I wouldn't probably use it if there's flammable, like if you have a generator or a stove going. I'm not too concerned because this will evaporate, but it looks like that alcohol is kind of the key to loosen up that bond. I guess you could let it soak in for a few minutes and come back to it, but looks like that's the key. Does smell like rubbing alcohol, obviously, but I don't mind it. But if you do, then maybe do this in a well-rented area or outside. Seems like this end is a little bit more, I put a little bit more glue on this end than the other one because it's taking more effort to remove. It's coming. There you go. There you go. We'll just pull it away, remove our alcohol. I was really hoping that would work because I fought with this one time and had to took some pliers, and that wasn't the best idea. So this should just fall away, and I'm wearing gloves. And then we'll just discard this, throw it aside. Sounds super neat. And then we'll clean this. I'm going to put some rubber gloves on to clean this. We're going to want to clean this extremely well. So no smudges. So I'm going to get some lens cleaner. I'll be back. So what we got here, Harbor Freight Special. We got a box of those. Got some gloves. This is lens cleaner. I got this at my eye doctor. Actually, my wife got it at the eye doctor. This is probably one of the best stuff. You can use Windex, but it's probably one of the best stuff. And then we got a little lint-free cloth. And in addition, we got this to check for any. This is some because I'm an old dude, my eyes aren't the best. This is going to check for any places we missed. So this is some cleaning wipes specifically for lens. If you don't have this, preferably if you have a lint-free towel, Windex will work, and that's fine if that's all you have. Just make sure it doesn't leave any smudges. So normally I would just wet this, kind of soak it really well, and then just proceed to clean it. And it's going to go over several passes because obviously once we mount this in the frame, see, I feel a little bit of glue residue here. So we'll take our plastic. I feel a little bit of glue residue here. The alcohol could clean that up, but yeah, we feel a little bit. It just came off there. You're going to feel that in your cleaning towel here. Paper towel is going to leave little fibers, so if preferable, if you can find an eyeglass towel or something that would clean your glasses with, or camera lenses, but it's preferably lint free so you don't get all those little pieces. And obviously I'm working on a towel here, so it's going to have some particles that are going to transfer. This is the first pass. Obviously preferably would be put this on a lint free cloth and then clean it with a lint free cloth, but this is just initial pass. It's sort of clean from the factory, but again, I want to get all the imperfections I can before we may not mount it in that frame. And we just carefully flip it over. Yeah, I can see some streaks. I know the camera probably won't be able to pick that up, but this is probably one of the most challenging. I know cleaning glass, you wouldn't think, oh, that's easy. But this glass is like their economical special replacement glass, I guess, for windows or whatever. So it's really hard to clean. So if you were doing this more professionally, I'd probably recommend a specific glass company. I don't know how much that's going to cost, but specifically that's cleaned, UV blocking. But this is kind of on a budget. That's kind of the theme of this show here. It's on a budget and what you can get locally from your home store. So that's kind of the theme here. Yeah, a big piece. This is 16 by 20. I think it was less than 10 bucks, but don't quote me on that. Everything's gone up in price, but definitely a piece of glass from a professional glass store is going to be pretty pricey. Well, $50, $60. I'm not really sure. Obviously, anti-glare, UV coating, and all that, and then have them trim them, clean up, polish the edges. But yeah, this is just for what you can find at your home store and DIY. I'm just kind of going over this to make sure I don't feel any glue residue, and then I'm going to look at it through the light. Best if you look at it at all angles of the light. I have some pretty bright fluorescence in the laundry room here. But if you have a flashlight, because you want to get as many of those streaks out as possible, and that's why I got these little magnifiers, because I can't see very well. So put those on later, but then I'm just going to pull this up. But this is probably the most difficult part. And I know that camera's not going to pick it up very well, but I still see some streaks. Yeah, this glass is like almost impossible to clean. So you may have to go over it several times with different sides of your little towel here. You may even, this is the most difficult. I guess it's not as difficult as cleaning the mirror of the Hubble back almost 25 years ago, and of course the James Webb telescope. Obviously this is not a clean room, and this is not a $1 billion piece of glass, but anyways, I just kind of want to clean it really well. Make sure there's no streaks, and then flip it over, and then run over it again and again and again and again and again. Yeah, I can see a huge streak. I know it's hard, you won't be able to see this in the camera, but I'm just holding it up at different angles of the light. That's why I'm wearing gloves, so I don't smudge it with my hands, because obviously your human hands has oil on them and it'll smudge it. So we just keep, yeah, this is the most intensive. I can go over it with the paper ones, and then but these actually do leave microscopic fibers, and so does this. Just the act of moving, and obviously you want to try to do this in a dust-free, clean area. My laundry room isn't exactly that, but this does leave microscopic fibers. Because I was cleaning my telescope and the back mirror, and I used this magnifier and this system, and there's some microscopic, well, I mean obviously enough that I can see it with these, but there's some microscopic fibers that this introduces. So we can only get it cleaned so much. So yeah, that's basically it. And then I'm going to flip it over, and then yeah, I do see a little bit there, but yeah, obviously clean it, flip it over, go check both sides, and just keep doing that. So I got the initial clean with this. There is some more smudges, so this may be saturated. So we're going to use some of the towel here, these little wipes. Got these at my eye doctor. I'm a photographer, so I go through these quite often. But if you don't have these, I would just say maybe a lint-free cloth, if you can find one. Again, if there's one that came with your eyeglasses, and if you have an extra one, you might be able to use that. Or if maybe ask your eye doctor, or of course you can buy these at the store. Again, I'm a photographer, so I have a ton of these by the case. But yeah, let's see how we no residue. Let's see how we did on this side with that. Yeah, my rag was saturated. I still see some. I know you can't see this now, but there's a right in the middle. There's a huge smudge. So I don't know if it's on this side or the other side, but I'm flipping these over, flipping my little towelette over. And if you use regular tissue, it's going to leave a ton of little fibers. If you use a regular hand towel, it's going to use a ton of fibers. So you want to use a towel that's specifically for cleaning glass or lens cleaner. Might be able to pick those up at Home Depot or maybe Walgreens. But yeah, the initial, you might be able to use paper towel for the initial cleanup, but for that fine, you're going to want to use a lint-free cloth. So, and I'm just going over this every such way and then flip it one way over. See, that's getting better. I know it's, you obviously still can't see it, but I still see a little bit of smudge. Just keep flipping it over using a new piece of towel and just hit it again and again. This is the most time consuming, because like I said, this glass is economical glass. So if you're serious about making frames, I would probably look into getting like a specialty glass cut place, and they're obviously going to be able to clean your glass and have it, you know, UV, all that protection, anti-glare. But again, this is DIY, do it yourself, something you can do on the cheap. But yeah, I'm just kind of going over this and then going over it again, flipping it over. I think that's coming out a lot better. I still see a huge, I'm going to do very even, easy pressure. Can't tell which side that is. Flip it over and do it again, and then again, and then again. Yeah, it's real hard to clean. I think it's coming. That's why I'm wearing these gloves, Harbor Freight Special, so I don't leave any fingerprints or smudges. And then I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt, so nothing, and it's a clean long sleeve shirt, so no hairs or none of my falls on it. So it's getting a lot better here. Just want to do I do overlapping patterns, just like you're polishing a car. Yeah, see, there's a tiny little bit here. It's hard to see. Pretty pleased with that. And then it's also the imperfections of the glass too. I see a tiny bit. So it's not art quality, or it's just regular contractor glass. I don't know if... So yeah, but again, it's DIY. Yeah, as I still see a smudge. So yeah, I just keep cleaning and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. You know, because once we set this in the frame, we'll actually silicone it in. So kind of semi-glue it in. So then that one side, I mean, obviously you can take it apart, but you want to get it as clean as possible. Because if you have a smudge and you've already put it together, that's the most annoying part. So just keeping cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. And I picked up a little fuzzy here from the towel and the glue. Ideally would be to use a clean room, I mean, not a clean room, but a clean towel underneath. This is a fairly clean towel. You want to have a nice clean workspace. Pretty pleased with this so far now. Like I said, a lot of my videos and kind of sloppy. But yeah, I don't, obviously you're just going to be able to see the glare, but then I'll put on my, I'm pretty pleased with the way this came out. And then I'm going to put on this, and then I'm going to inspect it really closely. I'm going to first take off my safety glasses and put this on, and then inspect it extremely detailed. I'm going to put it up and then just look at through this here just to see if I see any glare. And what I do is I take the rag and then just brush the fibers down. Just that final, have gravity brush them down because I was working on a flat surface. And then do the other side. And we could take a little air can duster and dust this out as well. Just want to make sure we get all the fibers. And then any smudge marks that we may have picked up. Pretty pleased with that. So now the moment of truth is to dry fit it in the frame. Well, we messed up. The glass doesn't fit. You need to take off maybe 1/8 of an inch all around. I did measure this, but when I measured this, I was off. I thought, because these glasses are okay, it's just we measured it, but obviously we didn't measure it very well. So my other experience on this, so here's my ruler, and my other experience, my other piece of glass when I tried this before was 1/8 of an inch too short. The whole glass was maybe 1/8 to 1/16. This is actually dead on at 16. So I built my frame obviously 1/8 of an inch too short. And this glass is exactly 20 according to my ruler here. So it's exactly 20. Obviously my inside is 1/8 of an inch off because I figured 1/8 of an inch. So we have a couple choices. You can either trim the glass or cut the frame. I don't want to trim this glass because it took me a little while to clean it. So we're going to take this to the router and we're just going to nick off maybe 1/8 of an inch because that's what it seems to be. That's why it's extremely important on these frames to maybe go maybe 1/8 of an inch over. I went 1/8 of an inch under and it bit me. So we're going to take this to the router. Going to take our frame and widen this. We're going to take 1/8 of an inch off on each side here. On here we're going to take the router and take this inside of this frame and clean it up. I measured it 1/8 of an inch shorter because the other glass was maybe a 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch off. So that's why it's always good to dry fit and then check and measure and check and measure. So didn't want to do that because I've already finished it, but that's what we have to do. So we're going to take this to the router, and then it's not too much on this one side. Again, it's 1/8 of an inch off all the way around because I figured the other one was a little too short. This one was dead on. So I was afraid of that. But it's all part of the learning curve, learning opportunities. So I'll try to talk over the AC, but here's our setup here. Here's our router table. We got a 1/4 inch bit. As you can see, half is It's going to take off maybe 1/8 of an inch. We got our fence secure, our clamps. We're going to just walk this all around the length here, and then measure again. So that's a 1/4 inch bit, and half of that's going to be taken off. So we'll see. It's always good to go less and then check, and then if you have to cut more, cut more. So we can't measure. We cut off too much. We're almost out of 16 1/4 on this very edge here. So it was just a quick cut. That's okay. We can shim it up. We can use caulking. But we're almost at a 16 1/4. And then to check this other side here, yeah, we're about 20 1/4. So yeah, we took off a little bit more meat than we wanted to. I'm not too terribly concerned about that, because that'll give us some room to fit this glass. So let's try to fit this glass in there. So our glass fits really good. We picked up some dust particles, so I'm just using my little cleaning rig and just doing a final cleaning. But yeah, our glass, we cut a little bit too deep, but I'm not too worried about that. Let's go ahead and clean this up. Clean it on both sides. We picked up a little bit of smudge here. So yeah, this is I put it a little bit too, but I'm not too terribly worried about that, because we're going to put some caulking all around and let it sit in there. But yeah, we took off a little bit too meat, but obviously go ahead and measure. And I measured 1/8 of an inch too tight, and so I took off a little more than 1/8. But I'm not too terribly worried about that. But just always measure twice and cut once, or measure maybe even 3 times. But yeah, it actually fits nice in this little groove. So and it's nice and square. So we'll put some caulking in there, and that'll work just fine. So we got some Loctite waterproof sealant. You'd probably want to use some really high quality stuff. This is obviously transparent, so I'm going to put a little bead all around, and this is going to fit, and the bead's going to fit, the glass is going to fit, but it's just going to be a very, very tiny bead so it doesn't bleed through on the other side. So we're just going to put a little tiny bead right where the finish is. Just tiny, tiny, ever so slightly, because as you can see here, just running, I don't know, maybe 1/8, maybe 1/16 of an inch. I want to run that all the way around. So we've got it set in the glass. I changed gloves. So it's a tiny, tiny bead that is not smearing on the other side. Just doing this for my own benefit. My router job wasn't the best. There's a little bit of bloat out there. We'll clean it up on the other side. Definitely it's best to measure, and maybe make this 1/8 of an inch wider. Make it 1/8 of an inch wider. But yeah, here's my silicone bead. I'm just checking this over myself. There's a little bit of mess. I'll clean up there. But this is just for myself, so I can see this easy, because my eyes I can't see very easy. So we'll set that in there. So we have a piece of mat board that I bought from Michael's. I cut it to size. I cut it a little big. And then we got a piece of mounting board. It's for a 12 by 18 artwork. Fits a 16 by 20. So I just kind of dry fit this in here with the packaging on. Yeah, I don't know if you can see, but I have plenty of wiggle room. And then at the top here, I have yeah, I'm not taking the paper out quite yet because I'm not ready to take it out. But yeah, this fits in really well. These are kind of expensive. I want to say 12 bucks, but I can't remember. These were actually kind of expensive. So we have a 12 by 18 piece of a picture. This is a 16 by 20 frame. So our mat board, and you want acid-free mat board. So that's our mat board, mounting board, and then this is a little tight. So we're going to take off a little bit on this mat board. We're just going to take a straight edge and just take off a little bit, cut it a little bit, maybe 1/8 of an inch, and then check it out. I do want to make sure it fits pretty tight in there, but we're going to take a little bit, 1/8 of an inch off each side with our straight edge, and then cut off just a little bit until it fits the way we want it. Okay, we cut our mat board to fit. I just took off a little bit to custom fit it in here, and our mat board fits pretty good. It's a little sloppy. I'm just a little sloppy in general, but because this frame, when I nicked this here, it kind of threw everything off. So yeah, this fits pretty well. So now we're ready for the picture. So we get our mat board. Now I'm using framer's tape. This is for picture frames. It is non-acid, and it's framer's tape. I got this at, actually got it online at Art Joe's or something, but this is framer's tape. So we're going to temporarily tape our picture in, and then I'm just going to touch it up just the edges with a little bit of glue, just ever so slightly, but the tape's going to hold most of it. So here's our mounting board. And let's go get our picture. So as I said, my other life, I'm a fashion photographer. These are some of the prints I had done. This is for one of the designers, Denver top designer. And these came out spectacular. Here's our photo. Comes with this protective film on it. We're going to measure it, put it in the frame, and then go from there. So we predetermined that this over here is going to be the bottom. What we want to do is we want to measure exactly all the way around so it's perfectly flat with our with our ruler. Just going to measure. This looks like it's a little over 2 inches, but I'm going to measure all around to make sure it's super square, and then we'll just tack a little bit of tape, measure again so it's nice and straight and square to the mat board. So this is what's going to take a little while, but you got to make sure it's square and straight. And also, this is going to be the top, this is going to be the bottom. We're going to clean the glass one more time. Going to clean it one more time, because I noticed when I was putting that on there, there was a spot. So we're cleaning the glass one more time before we set it in there. I noticed a smudge. And we'll get the other side later. Well, I don't want to put too much pressure and push this out. So I'm just finishing up with the framer's tape to seal this in. So I completely taped up all the edges with this framer's tape. It's for artwork, gallery artwork. It's acid free. So I just wanted to show a close up here, and then we'll lay our board in. So we're using this handy dandy Logan drill driver. What it does is you position it like this, and the pins go in this way. So it's like a staple gun, but it's not. Got this from Amazon. It's a Logan. It's specifically for a little points. It shoots a little point. And let me go a little test piece here. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot this. This is a box that's kind of junky. So see, it shoots a little point, and it's going to shoot it in, and you like this, and it shoots this way out. So that's just to show you these little tabs. They're little framing tabs. So I'm just going to go maybe every 2 inches, inch all around with this framing. Again, it's like a staple gun, but it's specifically a dual driver. It's specifically for these little pins to hold those in. So what I like to do is I like to start like a torque sequence here, 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 here. Get it all like do a star pattern. I don't know if that makes sense. Just to get this perfectly nice and flush in there. But I usually like to shove it underneath so it's got some good meat to hook into. So let's go. Not going to show you all this, but basically I just shove it in. So let me zero in here. So basically I'm just going to go all around, and it's got a little tip here, and that's kind of to center it. So here's my other pin. I'm going to go up here and just shove it at an angle. So I'll show you what it looks like so far. This is just, so these little points, and they hold the mat board in. And as you can see here, so I'm just going to go ahead and just maybe every inch, 2 inch, and just really set this in here. That's kind of what we're doing. Close up of the action. I'm taking it and I'm putting it at a slight angle so it can get some good meat in there. And I'm kind of pushing kind of hard on that edge, and then not the cleanest job, maybe an inch, inch and a half, inch and a quarter. As you can see here, this is where I took out too much, so didn't have enough place to bite into, but just looking overall, it's kind of a sloppy job, and sorry, but we just want to make sure this is held in there really, really well. So I'm just inspecting it here, just to make sure it's held in very, very well. And right there my piece didn't hold very well. It's kind of tough to pull that out. Yeah, it's a nice little, if you do a lot of framing, I would definitely suggest getting this point driver. It's pretty good. Obviously you don't want to crack your glass, so we have two cushions. We have the backing board and then the mounting board. And we're going to clean it again. I took this to clean off some of the edge that bleed out. I'm not going to press too hard because I don't want to pop this glass out. But I just want to get these edges so there's no grease, so there's no residue from that caulking. And then I'm going to clean it again. Yeah, unfortunately, when that caulking bleeds over, it really smears. So I try not to put a huge bead on. Pretty pleased with this. And then we'll put the paper on, and then the hooks. And we're almost done. So now we're going to put brown paper behind it to seal it. I got this from Amazon. It's craft paper. It's 30 by 150. I forget how much it's craft. Brown craft paper. I'm going to cut it to fit, but I'm going to cut it so I might have about a ½ inch of frame all around. So about a ½ inch of frame. So I'm going to cut this so it overlaps my frame because we're going to glue it to the back of this frame. Okay, we've cut our paper to fit. We're going to run a bead of wood glue. I'm going to run an inside bead of wood glue. Maybe about a ½ inch in of wood glue. And I'm going to smear it with the gloves. I'm going to go all around with the wood glue. And then we'll set our paper in. So I'm just flattening it down. Then I'll wipe the excess glue off. Just flattening the paper down. Just wiping it off the wood. So what we've got D-ring hooks. So what we've got a D-ring hook pack. We've got some wire, holds 50 pounds, it's 9 feet, and some little screws. And what you want to measure, this is going to be the bottom, this is going to be the top. You want to measure 1/3 down and drill your 3/32 hole for these. So on our frame, it's about 18.5. So we'll come down about 6 1/8 maybe, because it's 3/8. It's actually 16 3/8 this way. So we're going to come down 6 3/8 to make it a third, or 6 1/8. I'm sorry. So we're going to tack a screw here, and then on the other side we want to measure the exact same down, but looks like we're 6 1/8. And I want to put that about halfway in the meat of that. So we're going to drill and then screw in our D-ring hooks. But looks like 6 1/8. So I'm going to drill right there. So what I do, I have a 3/32 bit. I have a little stop tape. So I only want to go in about 1/4 inch when I drill this hole. Do the other side. And then we gently screw in the little screws by hand. So obviously I'm screwing in, but I'm going pretty slow because I don't want to crack the wood. I'm going to angle that just like that. I want to put it snug, I don't know, maybe seven foot-pounds of power, maybe even 4. And then I'm going to do the other side. So here's our wire. I'm wearing gloves because I don't want to get poked. I'm going to thread one end obviously through here. I'm going to leave a lot of slack, and then I'm going to twist it, I don't know, maybe a dozen times so it's really nice and tight. And then I'm going to do the other side. So I'm just going to twist it and twist it. I got about maybe 2 inches here. Just going to twist it pretty tight. Don't want this coming unraveled. It's not very heavy, but we just don't want it to come unraveled. Not very elegant there. But yeah, I'm just going to twist all this, twist it up. Yeah, you get the point. Okay, this other side I got my wire cutters. I want to cut it maybe about 2 inches longer. I'm going to actually make that pretty tight. I mean, not super tight, but I'm going to cut it about 2 inches longer than what I need. And then we're going to do the twisting action. And then of course we're going to feed it through. Now make sure I want to make sure my line is pretty tight here. Not super tight, but just enough so we can, and then we're going to twist it over. Okay, so I tucked this end in pretty well because it's kind of frayed and I don't want anybody tucked it in and pretty tight. I could have a little bit more knots here, but okay with that. And then on the other side, kind of the same situation here. I'm pretty confident that that's going to hold. So this isn't a very heavy frame. So we're almost done. Okay, we're almost done. We're going to put these little self-adhesive vinyl bumpers on the very bottom here. So when it hangs, we're going to put it on the bottom corner so when this hangs, it doesn't mess up the wall. We're going to put these little tiny bumpers. And then we're almost done. So here's our finished frame. We're going to lay it flat to let it dry. And here's what our frame looks like. The edge of our frame. There's a glare because of light. Sorry about the glare. So this is the overall frame, and again, my other life, I'm a photographer. This is for hot pink matter. Let's check the back side, and we have our little rubber bumpers on both sides, and then we're just going to let this lay flat to dry. But I just wanted to see the final product. I got a little bit of tiny glue I'll clean up. But other than that, That's the full frame. That's a frame made out of pallets.